Well, let me just go ahead and start by kind of breaking open a real quick story to you real quick.
Okay.
Back when my wife and I first came to this church, I don't know, it was like 2006, 2007, something like that. We were sitting there in the sanctuary. We were digging the music, digging the service, and I think Jeff, our musical director here, said, and I think he said something to the effect of you're gonna start a song, or you're gonna sing a song, or lead the song, or whatever. And he said, Jim, and I'm like, Jim, okay, all right. I had no idea. I just was like, okay, Jim, all right. And you sang, and it was a great job. You had a great voice. Kind of reminded me of a little bit of just a sweet soul sounding voice. You know what I mean? But I've always watched you up there playing guitar and singing and stuff like that. And then it was a couple of years later, I think I actually started staff, and I saw your name, Jim Morse. And I'm like, no way. I started putting the pieces together. I'm like, that's Jim Morse, the world-renowned Jim Morse. The man who changed the landscape of music, that's Jim Morse.
I am known all over Pasco County.
You don't give yourself enough credit. But of course, my head started going to, okay, what, when, how, why, where, what happened? How did you, the world-renowned Jim Morse, with the legendary Morrisound Studios, start doing stuff at New Hope?
Well, so you want me to tell you the story?
Yes, absolutely.
First off, you got to go back a long ways, like decades before you were born. And and I was raised in the church. It was a Presbyterian church, even though I was actually named for a Methodist minister. And music has always been a big part of my family. I vividly remember coming on the way home from church every Sunday, the whole family singing along, singing hymns we had just sung, singing songs that we heard in school, whatever. And if you were the kid that couldn't sing a cool harmony, you were the stupid kid in the back. So they made you, I apparently was in the back a lot. But so the music and church thing has always been a big deal for me. Flash forward to my career as a recording studio owner and engineer and producer. My biggest goal, we opened our studio in 1981. Mm-hmm. So it's 40 years ago. And my biggest goal at the time was I was kind of done playing. I had been on the road for a few years playing in different bands, and I kind of figured out this is no way to live a life. I can't have a family this way. Nothing's I was young. I was 23. We opened the studio, but my goal was to be really good at something, and I knew as an electrical engineer, I knew that the recording part was a good idea. So we got involved in recording, and I just was constantly striving to do good work. It just so turned out that this area in Florida, sort of a hotbed for heavy metal stuff. Mm-hmm. And heavy metal stuff is very hard to record. I tell this to people all the time. When you're recording a heavy metal record, every single sound has to be huge. This is what the client says. I want that drum sound, has to be huge. The guitars, they have to be huge. The bass, huge. I want a huge vocal sound. So if everything is huge, then nothing is huge, right? Everything is the same size. Okay. So it's really difficult to do, and to make it sound on a 3-inch speaker or a pair of earbuds to make everything sound huge. And it's probably the most difficult kind of music to record, I think, having recorded kind of everything. Mm-hmm. So consequently, people were doing a pretty bad job of it. Yeah. When we opened our studio, and I was bound and determined to do a good job. I thought it was a cool idea. Let's do a good job. So I my brother and I sort of became known for it, like recording heavy metal bands. It's not not that I don't like heavy metal. It's not my first choice of music to listen to at home. But I've done so much of it now that I guess I have a reputation and I'm sort of known for doing it. But that's just a thing that I do. It's like I also watch football,
Right.
but it's not who I am is that football guy,
Yeah.
And so back in the 70s, when I was playing in a band full time while I was going to college, but mostly I was playing in the band because I couldn't afford college. I'm going to get part of the story wrong because my memory won't be exactly what Jeff's memory is. But we kind of shared notes a little bit, and we think this is what happened. Sometime about 1979, maybe 1980, I was playing in a band, and and this is not a judgmental thing, but I don't drink.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't enjoy alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
My wife drinks enough beer for the two of us. So this is not a judgment thing. I just don't enjoy it. I think a good Diet Coke is awesome, especially a no fresh one, but, so even back then, back in those days, I didn't drink, but the band I was in, one thing that most people probably don't know is after bands leave a gig, if they're playing for a gig, a lot of them, that's when they party. So they go to a bottle club, and I don't even know if there are still bottle clubs. Maybe there are. I don't know. It's not part of my lifestyle, but, so my whole band would go to this bottle club, and of course I would be the designated driver.
Mm-hmm.
Even back in 1979, they had designated drivers because everybody in the band knew, well, Jim won't drink, so he gets to drive us all back when we're in a drunken stupor,
of course,
heading back to the gig. And I remember sitting at a bottle club, sitting at the bar, drinking soda or something, or lemonade or something, and just kind of waiting for the rest of the band to get tired of whatever they were doing. And I see this guy with a blonde fro at the other end of the bar, and he's not drinking either. So we strike up a conversation. Turns out he's a trumpet player in a disco band, and I'm a guitar player in a hard rock band. But we were the only two sober people there, and he seemed like a really cool guy. And we struck up a conversation, and every few weeks we'd see each other at the same bottle club. I'm like, dude, it's you. You're the guy. I don't think I ever knew his name because he was the guy. He was the other guy.
Yeah. And
you go forward a few more years, and my friend Brad Trumbull and I, who used to play the Hammond organ at our church, we were by this point, I had the studio and I was gigging on the weekends, which is something I still do. And I was gigging with Brad a lot. And we had this one gig where we had to open. We were the band for Ed McMahon. Now, do you remember who Ed McMahon was?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So if any of the podcast people, yeah, right. There you go. Yeah, it's not Phil Hardman. It's actually Ed McMahon. He was doing some charity thing at a hotel in downtown Tampa and needed a band. He needed a Doc Severinsen band. So we had one section. We hired Gene Cannon, who still plays the sax at the church, great sax player, longtime friend of mine. And we hired this trumpet player with the blonde fro. And I'm like, dude, it's you. You're the guy. That's the guy. And I'm like, I couldn't believe after all these years, I see there's the bottle club guy, the other sober guy. And one thing leads to another one. And a couple of years after that, I get a call from this guy, Jeff Brandt. And he says, dude, it's me, the guy. And I need a guitar player at my church. I'm like, a guitar player at church? I thought that was against the rules, and he says, no. Are you a believer? I said, well, yes, I am. I'm raised as a Christian household, and I am a believer. I'm generally, my wife and I had kind of been searching for churches in the Carrollwood area where I used to live and had been disappointed time and time again. But we were at that point going to a place called Van Dyke United Methodist. I still have friends that go there. But Jeff said, hey, I need a guitar player that plays like rock music. I don't need a jazz guy. I don't need, we were trying to move our church into like the late 20th century. And this is about 1995. So he was right.
Yeah.
And I just thought, if this guy, Jeff, who's such a cool guy, if he wants me for something, dude, I'll slog it down to Brandon and do this because I believe him. And now I know that there's probably a 1% chance that Jeff Brandt will ever see that, because there's some things about Jeff that most people don't know. First off, he is a wealth of knowledge about his faith in God, music, and tractors. And you can ask him about any of those things, but don't ask him about Zoom calls or iOS or like operating systems or any kind of telecommunication. Don't ask him about subscriber trunk dialing or any stuff. Or that's not what Jeff Brandt's all about. So he's probably not going to watch this. So I can get away with telling you stories about Jeff Brandt, but I love that guy, and I would take a bullet for him. And if he needed me for something, I was going to be there for him. And because he's a heart on your sleeve kind of guy. He is, from my experience, he is the guy he says he is when he's talking to you. Yeah. And I truly love that. And so he inspired a lot of personal loyalty to me. So when he said, "Can you come all the way over to Brandon and play guitar for me?" I'm like, dude, I'm there. And one thing led to another when I had a series of different life events that made me stop and come back. But right after 9/11, he called me and said, "Look, we got a real problem. I need somebody to mix the front of house. I know that's not something you want to do in your spare time because it's my, I mix albums in my job. But it's Jeff Brandt. So what am I going to say? No, I can't say no to Jeff Brandt. So I came and mixed front of house for a little while, and then something happened with the guitar player, and he said, "I know that you have a limited amount of time, but I need you to play guitar again instead of mix front of house. I'll get somebody else to mix front of house. Can you please play guitar?" Again, it's Jeff Brandt. What am I going to? I can't say no to that guy. So. Right. So then I played there until just before the pandemic as a guitar player, even though, I drive about an hour to get to New Hope from where I live, which is right around the Arctic Circle at the Hernando County line. Yeah, that's where north of this the trees don't grow. That's how far north. And the snow-capped peaks are right over my shoulder here. And so, as far as me being, kind of a music industry guy, I guess it's maybe it might be considered a kind of an anomaly, but to me, it makes total sense. Mm-hmm. And I will say that I'm mixing in the back room for the online service, and people who are listening to this podcast have probably watched the online service because they would be tech savvy. So since January, I've been trying to make hay with our online music mix, and it's a challenge because it's there's some talented people there, but there's some technological issues, and I make albums rather than do PA stuff. So I tend to mix it like I'm mixing an album, and I usually get a chance to rewind and hit again when I'm doing that. But it's been a fun thing, and I think that I actually believe in today's society that the online church thing is a really important thing. So when Jeff asked me to do that, I'm like, well, it's something, and again, it's something I really believe in. That people need to be connected in every way, and the church needs to be. Well, it's sort of like when Vicky and Roberto added the extra line to our spiritual growth card about preaching the gospel, basically. And I don't remember exactly what it says. We say it every Sunday, but I can't remember it right now. But it's the new line. Yeah. Being an online service is a way for us to communicate with people who may not some of them are just, they can't come in on a Sunday morning. They're out of town, or they have family obligations that make it more reasonable for them to go to church on their iPad.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's how you feel about it. I'm sure that's how Vicky feels about it and Roberto feels about it. So I want, the nice thing about what Jeff has asked me to do there, mixing it background, I get a chance to really try to make that experience as cool as I can make it, as because of the music, I feel, is obviously, as a musician myself, the music is such an important part of kind of capturing people's attention and putting them in a mindset where they're thinking about things that they need to be thinking about, whether it's you giving the message, which, by the way, you're really good at it, and I kind of wish you would do more. But I mean, we've got the church is in a really good spot for me right now. I think Vicky is doing a fantastic job. I love what Roberto's doing. He just seems like I'm getting to know him a little bit, and he's funny, and he's real. And I think the three of you guys that have been preaching, and I know you don't, probably it's not your thing, but I think you're good at it, and it's really it's an exciting thing for me to sit back in the back and sort of try to help make sure that people at home can get it. They can get what's going on. And so that's how I've ended up doing what I'm doing now at the church. And yeah, it's still a long drive, but hey, Dunkin' Donuts makes a killer cup of coffee at 8 a.m. Sure, and it's a labor of love. It's an important thing. So did I tell you what you needed to hear?
You did more than that. That was awesome. And you're let me just tell you too, I think you're doing a great job, because when you shifted to behind the scenes, you literally went behind the scenes. Like, you sit in a room behind the church service and balance the sound, and you do an amazing job. It's spectacular. So
well, thanks.
I can't, my question is, because before I kind of stepped into this role, and a long time ago, you were born, but a long time ago, I was also doing music too, and was a musician, and actually had the privilege of working in y'all's studio for a little bit. But I know what it's like to get into that kind of realm where you're listening to so many different things, and you, especially because you do it for a living, you listen to all this stuff, and then you come in and you kind of have to change your mind a little bit on Sunday mornings because it's a different situation altogether. How much do you have to put into, like, changing your mindset to adapt to Sunday mornings?
Well, okay, that's a good question, actually. So congratulations on that. Well done.
Thank you.
You may have stumped me. No, you didn't stump me. The answer has several facets. Music is music. And so that part of it is easy. I tend to have, like most guys who mix music or make albums or mix front of house at concerts, you have a concept of what it should sound like. You're never going to get there because it's going to be what the artists are trying to do that matters. So in this case, I sort of know what Jeff wants. Mm-hmm. And I kind of wash that to a template of my skill set. So but the music part, that's easy. We've got solid players, and it makes my job real easy. I'm going to give a shout out to Zach, because he and Daniel are like a linchpin of the praise team musically. Mm-hmm. And it's they make it sort of easy to do the right mix because they're solid professional players, and that's a big deal. I'm really, having been, for a long time, Zach and I were both playing guitar, and I watched going to sound like an old man here, okay, but if the shoe fits, right? I watched his growth as a musician, kind of, and he might not even see it this way, but I saw it this way, sort of an amazing, staggering amount. to where he's now super solid. And in my mix, I lean on Zach a lot, and to make sure that the band sounds rich and really like a platform for what they're saying. But the other facet of what your question was, how do I change that from what I do during the week? I really say everything that you do in my job, making albums, is about telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it might be telling a story about drinking beer on the weekends if you're ZZ Top.
Right.
And that's apparently a good story. A lot of people do it.
Yeah.
But Sunday mornings have a different story to tell. So I look at the story. I mean, when I'm mixing the music part of it, I look, what's the story that the song is telling? Make sure I track it. Make sure that you can find that story, the thread that will basically draw the listener in. And yes, it should, I know this is probably against the rules in a church, but it should be entertaining, right? I really believe that the congregation needs to be engaged. To be engaged is to be entertained. You are entertaining new ideas,
Mm-hmm.
or you're entertaining an idea that may be an old idea, maybe 2,000 years old,
Mm-hmm.
but you need to be entertained to get that. So I see my little part of the job is making sure that the people online at home or wearing earbuds or listening on their computers or whatever can find the musical story that's in there. Because when you guys start preaching, that's a story. I mean, and then all I do is make sure the fader's up so you can hear you talking. and I admit that that the part of it where I'm mixing a live performance, I haven't, aside from what we're doing now at New Hope, that's not really my thing. Back in the early 80s, my studio, we had a PA company, and I did front of house for several regional tours with the Pointer Sisters and with the Dave Brubeck group and Ray Charles, which was the coolest thing, about 20 shows of Ray Charles, and Nitty Gritty Dirt Band and Freddie Fender. And I was doing small regional tours like Southeast US, mixing front of house. And that was 38 years ago. So the live thing, there was a little personal in my head, arm twisting. Come on, Jim, just go ahead and do this. Yes, it's not what you like to do, but it's an important job. And besides, Jeff Brandt asked you to. So I'm on, so the mindset really isn't that different to me. It's storytelling. The music is the music. Got it. The storytelling part is how I chase my mix around, how I chase it. And really that's what I feel the congregation needs. They need to be able to seamlessly follow that story, whatever it is.
You bring up a good point too, that I was just thinking of, when telling a story, and working in a recording studio since 1981. You've worked not only with heavy metal, but different genres as well. But you have gotten a clear picture of what formula is all about, because, there's a formula to metal, there's a formula to pop music, there's a formula to rock. And I'm sure you hear and see the formula to Christian contemporary music too. Do you ever get sort of like, I don't know, do you do anything, or when you hear that formula starting to come through, you're like, this sounds like the last song we played last Sunday and the last song we played last Sunday. What am I going to do to make it different? Or do you kind of just go with it to formulate it?
Okay. That's another really good question.
I'm sorry.
You're full of them. I don't really see it as my job to make them different or the same. Quite frankly, as a church, we kind of count on Jeff Brandt for that, to give us what we need. I mean, you guys, like when you preach, you probably sit down and say, hey, this is what my sermon's going to be about, Jeff. Mm-hmm. Find me stuff that is complementary to my idea. I'm sure that's what you do. I hear that's what Vicky and Roberto both do. So that's the job of the music, is to set you guys up so that your story works better. It's like a picture frame.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure it's the right landscape for the central character to get his message across. I look at it a little different than I guess your question implies. I want the music to sound as realistic and natural and rich as I can make it sound. And I think it's the job of the musicians and Jeff to make those artistic decisions, not me. The artistic part of what I do is really, it's like baking, right? I need a little bit of eggs. I need a little bit of milk. I need a little more snare drum. I need a little more guitar. I need a little less of that thing or whatever that thing is. I'm following instructions that the musicians are giving me. So, and that's sort of what I do as a mixer anyway, even when I'm mixing albums. As a record producer, I'm doing Jeff's job, where I'm helping the artist develop their message and helping them try to present the story of the song in the most insightful and incisive way. But at New Hope, with what I'm doing there, that's totally in Jeff's platform. He's very good at it, and I'm just trying to follow along in his footsteps.
Good answer. I like it. Let me ask you this: as a producer, is there a record you have yet to help make? Like, is there something that you would just love to help make? Maybe work with an artist or work with a band or maybe a certain genre, or is there something you still have yet to do?
Well, I have yet to make an album I'm totally satisfied with.
Okay.
And I think as soon as I do, I'm hanging it up.
Really?
Because first off, it's never going to happen. And when this has nothing to do with necessarily specifically with our church, but in making an album, you're chasing, like you say, you're chasing that story. And you might say, I want this song to sound like Bruce Springsteen. Well, unless you have Bruce Springsteen, you're not going to get that.
Exactly.
You're going to get a happy accident along the way that's amazing. Be ready to take that in. That my job is to say, hey, we just hit this thing that's really cool. It's not what we were looking for, but it does the job, and it's maybe a whole different approach that we didn't think of before, because musical accidents happen in wonderful ways sometimes. So I have yet to make the album I thought I was going to make when I started the album. As far as what artists I work with, if I got a call from Peter Gabriel tomorrow, I would drop everything. I mean, just beyond, in all honesty, I would drop everything. Or maybe Paul McCartney or Eric Clapton. But those three, I would drop everything and just say, look, sorry guys, sorry wife and kids, I'm out. I'm going. Now, my wife would come with me, and my kids are out of the house now, so they're safe. But I mean, however, neither Eric Clapton or Peter Gabriel or Paul McCartney are making that many albums anymore. So the odds of me getting that call in the middle of the night from people I've never met, very small. It's not zero.
Right.
Just
you never know. You never know with Peter Gabriel.
Yeah, you never know. He could all of a sudden be watching this podcast and you go, hey, I always wanted a bald guy to mix my record.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever, whether it was being on stage in church, playing with the worship band, or maybe even behind the boards, have you ever been in that one moment where you were just like listening to that song or the words or something like that, and it just like struck you? It was like a total God moment where it was just like, wow.
several times. Sometimes, there may be no evidence of this, but sometimes Jeff would pick a song for me to sing. And some of them are, quite frankly, some of them are just songs you sing and you go, okay, let's make the best. Let's present this in the best way we can. There were a few, and the names escape me, so that's not for this podcast, I guess. But a few where, as a musician, I tend to try to think about the words I'm singing and make sure that they can come across musically, rather than you just don't want to sing notes and hear the notes and they fit these syllables, and that's kind of like making a Lego instead of a painting, right? So there were a few songs that I sang and played guitar on that I was pretty emotional about, and it felt like kind of like God moments. And quite frankly, not to sound corny about it, but on some events, when we were doing a ballad and Marshall was, that Marshall Gillen, man, he will take your heart.
Yeah. And
there's a few times when I almost stopped playing guitar on something because he got me. And musically, I think to a certain extent, it's kind of cheating asking a guy like me that question, because my whole career and professional life is all about music. And I'm trying to make those connections with music. I'm trying. So when it happens, it shouldn't surprise me. And sometimes it still does.
Do you feel like since Jeff Brandt gave that phone call to you, that your relationship with God has just changed and has gone in a way you never expected it?
You mean the phone call back in the 90s?
Yes. Because really, he was kind of like the guy that said, you play for the church, and you really, you grew up that way, but you weren't really sort of associated.
Well, at the church, when he called me, the church I was going to was Van Dyke United Methodist.
Right. But how heavily were you involved in it?
They had a piano and a choir. And about once every 3 months, Matthew Hartsfield would say, hey, Jim, could you play guitar for this one singer and do this one song? So I would sit there with my acoustic guitar and play a song. So it was definitely almost like a sideshow.
Right. But when Jeff made that call, you became more and more
involved.
Important.
Yeah. I mean, I was a congregation member
at
Van, and it was right down the street from my house. And we had our kids in Sunday school there, and it's a great church, and Matthew Hartsfield is a fantastic preacher. So I was very happy as a congregation member there. And at first, when he first asked me to come play with him, it was a Saturday night thing Jeff was wanting me to do. So that was easy. I'd play, if I didn't have a gig Saturday night, I would come play with Jeff in the old social hall that got torn down. Then later in the garage, I guess, on Saturday nights. And it was me and Brad and several other people that you still see. When he asked me to do Sunday mornings, I was a little trepidatious at first because I didn't want to leave the church that my family went to. But because it's Jeff, I gave it a shot and said, well, okay, my family kept going to Van Dyke, and I drove all the way to Brandon, from where I used to live also, about an hour's drive. And trying to get the wife and kids up for an hour drive in the morning on Sunday morning, that's not a going proposition. So, but I'd sling my Stratocaster in the back seat and go down there. And it's a special feeling to be involved musically on a regular basis with trying to do what we're doing at New Hope. It's a connection. Now, I'm not going to say there was a God moment where all of a sudden, like the voice from the clouds and Jim, continue to play guitar.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's how that works, and it doesn't work that way for me. For me, it's a slow burn where it's you after playing 2 services, you put your guitar in the bag and you walk out to the car and you go, you know what? I could have made a difference today. Somebody could have been having a bad day, and I played a couple notes that they went, wow. And maybe it made them listen to the sermon, or maybe it didn't. And maybe they were in a place where they would sit in church and not listen to the sermon. But if a musical moment could show somebody there's more to it than what you're going through, you know, then so you feel like, you know, this is certainly in the big picture a lot more important than playing another Pink Floyd song at the bar.
Right. Absolutely.
Not that I have any trouble playing Pink Floyd songs at bars. I do plenty, but it's more of a, there was no one moment or big event. It's more of a slow burn.
Now, I asked you about how you take what you do during the week with your ears and go walk into Sunday morning. But is there ever a time where you take what you hear on Sunday morning and turn it around and put it throughout the rest of your week?
Actually, completely.
Okay.
Yeah. If you do what I do for a living, you learn something every time you put your hand on a console or a guitar. You learn. And as soon as I stop, like I said, I'm going to hang it up when I stop learning something, because that means I've given up. Right. But one thing I have learned since January, since I started mixing in the back room, of which I refer to myself as the creature from the back of the room.
I never said that. I never heard that. That's the first word.
Yeah. We've all heard you talking. And I've learned to approach. This is gonna be inside baseball kind of stuff. Okay, so sorry, those of you who have no idea what mixing means, you're gonna zone out here for a second.
That's what Google.
I've learned to approach. I've learned to approach melody in a mix a little differently. And I'm going to blame Jeff Brandt for this too. He puts a lot of singers on the stage. It's more singers than I would expect, because it can be messy with a lot of singers. Starts and stops, words not exactly, you know, S is going sisters instead of S, you know, you get messes. But, and again, I'm totally safe from Jeff seeing this, so I can say stuff about him now. The genius he had here is that the blending of the voices, if you can get the melody to mount up in the middle of the ring, you can really create, I don't know what you'd call it, a vibe in the song. And I have learned from this in my mixing and I've applied it to a few albums that I've done since then. In fact, I was recording an album yesterday, doing vocals on an album. And on this particular project, I did all the backing vocal arrangements. And I applied the Jeff Brandt melody lesson to that guy's record. And I already got a message back from the European label that said, "This is genius. We've never heard anything like this. This is awesome." So again, I'm safe of blowing up Jeff's head, because he's not going to watch this, because he probably can't figure out how to get his phone to do a Zoom call. But I love him for it, by the way. I love him for that. But I learned something technically, a technical mixing idea from the mixing in the back room. I will say this, the spiritual stuff I get out of church has very little to do with music. And I'm not a big dogma guy, you know. I mean, I was raised Presbyterian. Presbyterians, the foundational principle of Presbyterianism is, what's the covered dish? That's it. And in fact, Methodism isn't that much different. I think there's a famous quote from the founder of the Methodist Church, John Wesley, who said, "I love those green bean casseroles with the onions on them." I mean, I'm pretty sure I read that quote from John Wesley himself. So I'm sorry. I'm not really a very serious person if you haven't figured that out. So if you're looking for really serious, like thought-provoking stuff, not gonna fly here at the Morris house.
Listen, you answered it in the way that was great. It was Jim Morris. It was a Jim Morris.
I'm not a dogma type guy. So I look for, and I guess, if Vicky wants to hit me with a ruler on the back of the hand for saying this, she's welcome to try. I'm a fast runner. But the buzzwords mean very little.
Right.
And it's not Methodism or Catholicism we all have buzzwords. We use them all the time. A lot of them kind of go right in one ear of me and out the other ear. And that's great and fine. And I don't need to, that's not part of the message that I get to. I get to the part of the message that gets me is the whole thing about God loving us, God creating us and loving his creation, and how we respond to that data. That's what matters to me. I don't care what they call that. So that's there. I don't get that. The songs we sing set that message up, but it's, and I hate to sound like I'm disparaging my own profession, but it's the sermons that actually talk about that stuff. That's where I get the stuff. And is it every sermon? I dare say not. I get stuff out of every one of them, but there's those, and I'm sure a lot of people in the congregation feel the same way. There's sometimes when one of you guys will hit something that specifically stabs into my life and hits a point that goes, oh, didn't make that particular connection before. And those moments are powerful to me, and I look forward to them all the time.
That's awesome. That was a great answer. And I wasn't expecting anything but whatever you were going to go to. And you,
well,
and I happen to believe that a lot of people are just like you. So it's not like you're an exception, And
well, I hope most people don't have the same unfortunate hair loss, because boy, it's terrible.
Jim, man, I thank you so much for joining me this morning and doing this with me. It's been great talking with you. I also want to thank you for at least proving to my parents when they were alive that you can listen to heavy metal music and grow up okay.
Okay.
You're just fine, bro. You're fine, and so am I. Okay.
All right. Excellent.
But we appreciate you and all that you do. You're doing a great job, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, I hope I didn't wear out my welcome.
No.
I'm used to being I'm at this point now. I'm used to being the unseen with a capital U, the unseen, and it's kind of safe back there. I haven't got to the point where I started wearing flip-flops yet, but I probably won't, because Vicky will see it and she'll go, "What in the world are you doing? You can't do that here."
I don't think that'll happen. I think you're going to start a trend. So please, the invitation is there.
I'll believe that when I see you preaching with flip-flops on, brother.
I'll tell you what, the next time I do, I will wear flip-flops just for you. I'm not even kidding. Dare accepted.
And I had to wear flip-flops because that stupid unseen guy talked me into it.
I'm going to do it now. Watch.
Well, all right, man. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it.
It'll happen. I don't know when, but it's going to happen.
Hey, but I don't know. Whoever's watching the podcast, can I get a selfish promotion here?
Oh, absolutely. Please.
Oh, please come out this Friday to the social hall where I'm playing. We're doing we're doing Jeff's concert thing, and I'm playing this Friday, which is in 2 to 3 days, from 6 to 8 with a food truck, and it's much more fun to play to a room full of people than just play to chairs. Chairs are very, very quiet, and I'd rather play to people. So come on out, and I promise to play at least one note for everybody that's there.
I had no idea you were playing this Friday. That's awesome. This works out.
Okay, well, yeah, it's my little classic rock duo.
Okay.
And it's we're playing the stuff we normally play on Friday and Saturday nights, and it's just classic rock stuff from about 65 to about 81. That about 16 years of awesome music there, kind of just a lot of fun. And so anyway, I would like to play to people instead of just chairs. So please come out and hang out with me.
Absolutely.
And if you have complaints about anything that I've said today, I'd like you to write the complaints down carefully, fold the paper up, and set fire to it, because it's Chris's fault, not mine.
You can send those complaints to me. I'll take them. That's what I do.
All right, man.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Thanks,
We will
Chris.
see you Friday.
I'll see you Friday. Awesome.
7 p.m. or 6?
6 to 8.
6 to 8. Okay, 6 to
I'm
8 Friday in the courtyard.
It's 2 hours of straight music.
Yep. And food trucks too. So
Yeah, and food truck. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
awesome.
We'll
Thank
see you
so
there.
much.
Take care, Chris.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.